The student wants to make a generalization about ultra marathons. So we want to say something bigger picture about ultra marathons that's consistent with the evidence. A marathon is a long distance running race that is 26.2 miles long. An ultra marathon is a long distance race of more than that. The Kepler Challenge is a one-day 37.3 mile ultra marathon in New Zealand. The Spreeloaf is a 6-day, 261-mile ultra-marathon in Germany. So in general, an ultra-marathon is longer than a marathon, based on the two examples given. So that would be my anticipated answer. Ultra-marathons are longer than 26.2. Okay. So examples of ultra-marathons include this and that in Germany. No, that's not a generalization. That's examples. That's more detail or focused evidence. A marathon is 26.9, but the Spreeloaf ultramarathon, no, that's details. That's not a generalization. Ultramarathons range widely in length. Yeah, from 261 to 337, from a few dozen miles to a few hundred. Okay, a few dozen actually means more than two. They really could be more exact, but that is a good generalization. C is going to be our answer. So it's not that they're longer, it's that they range in a wide, they have a wide variety of ranges of distances. D, while the Kepler Challenge is a one-day, the Spreeloaf is a 6-day. That's not a generalization. That's not right. C is the answer. In this case, the student wants to explain the origin of the Perseid meteor shower's name. So how did this meteor shower get its name? Let's explain it. From Earth, all the meteors in a meteor shower appear to originate from a single spot in the sky. This spot is called the meteor shower's radiant. So that's where the meteor shower seems to originate from. Okay. The Perseid meteor shower is visible in the northern hemisphere in July and August. Okay. Like many meteor shows, it is named for the location of its radiant. Okay, that's the thing. Its radiant is located with the constellation Perseus. So how did it get its name? Because the location of the radiant, the one spot the meteor shower seems to come from, and that seems to be in the constellation Perseus. Thus it's named Perseid. So that explains it. Let's see which answer matches. The Perseid meteor shower is named for the constellation Perseus, the location of its radiant. That's exactly correct. Don't even need to see another answer, but we'll just review B, C, and D. A meteor shower's name may be linked to a single spot in the sky. Nope, that's not the evidence in the text. The Perseid meteor shower, which has a radiant, all do, is visible from the northern hemisphere. Nope, that has nothing to do with the name. From Earth, all the meteors in a meteor shower appear to originate from a radiant, such as the one. Okay, that's not anything to do with the name. A is the correct answer. The student wants to contrast the emissivity of reflective metal fibers with that of silicon carbon fibers. So the emissivity has something to do with the emission, perhaps of light, if it's reflecting. So metal fibers and silicon carbon fibers. What's the difference? Contrast. We want difference. Okay? Not the sameness, but difference. So physicist such and such was working on a garment suited for both warm and cold conditions. He analyzed the emissivity, or the ability to emit heat, so not reflect light, but just emit heat, of the materials he planned to use. Abibi found that reflective metal fibers emitted no heat and had an emissivity of 0.02. He found that silicon carbon fibers absorbed large amounts of heat and had an emissivity, right, which is the ability to emit heat, of 0.74. So the silicon fibers have a much higher emissivity. So the ability of reflective metal fibers and silicon carbon fibers to emit heat was determined by analysis. That's nothing about contrasting their two emissivities. The amount of heat a material absorbs is equal to the amount it emits. Okay, again, that's a definition, not a contrast. Though we need both things in there to be a contrast. So Though the reflective metal fibers in silicon carbide fibers had different rates of emissivity, a BB planned to use both in a garment. That's a similarity, a similar use. Whereas, okay, we've got our contrasting transition that always or almost always sets up the correct contrasting answer. And I could have contrasting and it not be the answer, but the correct answer will almost always have that contrasting while and whereas. Those seem to appear most often, contrasting transitions. So whereas the reflective metal fibers had an emissivity of just 0.02, the silicon carbide fibers absorb large amounts of heat and an emissivity of 0.74. That's correct. That's exactly the results of the data given in the text. And that is a difference, setting up the contrast. Okay. The student wants to present the influence theory to an audience unfamiliar with the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. Okay. So the audience does not know about this confederacy. And I don't either, actually. So he wants to present the influence theory. So tell me about the theory, and you have to tell me a little bit about what the Confederacy even is. Okay. So we'll probably use some of the early bullet points. The Haudenosaunee Confederacy is nearly a 1,000-year-old alliance between 6 native nations in the northeastern U.S. There we go. Okay. That's probably going to be in our answer. The members are bound by a centuries-old agreement known as the Great Law of Peace. Perhaps that will be in there too. Okay, historian Johansen is one of several scholars who believe that the principles of the Great Law of Peace influence the Constitution. The theory is called the influence theory. So the influence theory is that this document, this act, influenced the U.S. Constitution. Johansen cites that Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson both studied the Confederacy. So what would we say? We say the historian Johansen believes the Great Law was very influential. Okay, that says nothing about the Confederacy. So it doesn't help an unfamiliar audience. B, the influence theory is supported by the fact that Ben Franklin and Thomas Jefferson studied. No, and they don't really tell us anything about the Haudenosaunee Confederacy here either. So C, let's check that because B is wrong. The influence theory holds that the principles of the Great Law of Peace, a centuries-old agreement binding 6 native nations. Okay, we're getting a lot of background on the Haudenosaunee Convention. We're getting a lot of background on the Great Law of Peace and the influence theory, and it doesn't really say Haudenosaunee Confederacy. It doesn't use that word. It doesn't say what it is. So are they really helping an audience that's unfamiliar? I don't think so. I think that's not right. Native people, including the members of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, influenced the founding in the U.S. in many different ways. No, that's definitely not it. We don't know if they really influenced it. It may have. It's a theory. So A is wrong. D is wrong. C was sort of right. It just didn't mention the Haudenosaunee Confederation. Let's go back to B. Let's look at B and C a little more closely again. The influence theory is supported by the fact that both study the Haudenosaunee Confederacy. But again, if I'm unfamiliar with the Confederacy, this definitely doesn't help me. It's going to have to be C. This is the only one that mentions the theory. It holds that the principles of the Great Law of Peace influence the U.S. Constitution. That's the theory. So check on the first part, presenting the influence theory. And if the audience is unfamiliar with the Confederacy, it holds the principles of the Great Law of Peace, a centuries-old binding 6 native nations in the Northeast. That is the Confederacy. I mean, these are the same thing. The only problem is that it doesn't mention it by name. I would have liked to see the name, Haudenosaunee Confederacy, in C, but it's still the best answer among the choices. So C is correct. The student wants to emphasize Claude McKay's accomplishments before moving to Harlem. So what did this guy do before moving to Harlem? Not after, not during. So Claude McKay was a Jamaican-American writer. Songs of Jamaica and such are 2 acclaimed poetry collections he published while living in Jamaica. So here are his accomplishments before moving to New York. Okay. McKay moved to Harlem in 14. He is best known as a poet and novelist of the Harlem Renaissance. That's what he's known for after. So we don't care about that. After is not part of our condition, right? So his most famous works include this and this. Okay, so we want to just see the bullet point about the Songs of Jamaica and Constab Ballads. Jamaican American writer Claude McKay is the author of works such as Songs of Jamaica, Constab Ballads. That's not emphasizing. This includes the after part. So that's not just emphasizing before moving to Harlem. Although he's best known as a Harlem Renaissance writer, Claude McKay had published 2 acclaimed collections in 12 while living in Jamaica. This focuses on Jamaica. It's contrasting the fact that he did work beforehand. This is almost certainly going to be our right answer. Doubt we'll see anything better, but let's check C and D. In 1914, Claude McKay moved to Harlem, where he would become known as a poet and novelist. No, that's after. We don't want after. We want before. Before moving to Harlem, so far so good. Claude McKay, author of the poetry collection Harlem Shadows and the novel Home, lived in Jamaica. No, that doesn't say anything about his work before moving to New York. That's just he lived in Jamaica. Not good enough. Not nearly as good as B, which emphasizes his accomplishments before moving to New York. B is correct.